Welcome to another episode of CPAC Now America Uncanceled. We've all been so troubled with how we're seeing and watching our president handle one emergency after the other, but nothing is quite like just the shock and almost like the sickness that you get in your stomach, the nausea, when you see what's going on
and I think
in Afghanistan.
We think we have more questions than actual answers
Yeah,
is
right.
what's happening.
So
right
we
now.
have former ambassador to Germany, former D&I director Rick Grinnell with us. Ambassador Grinnell, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here on CPAC.
So you always break news. I wish you had to break less news, actually, Rick, because it's really sad what's happening. What's the latest on the ground in Afghanistan?
Look, I think people are shocked that we have a president of the United States who comes out and says, I got 90% of the people out, because most people outside of politics, they hear you left 10% of the Americans in Afghanistan. That's actually shocking to people outside of Washington. And within this bubble in DC, though, they literally are trying to spin, everything is fine. We got 90% of the people out. Now let's talk about, domestic programs. But this is a shock to the system for many Americans who think, why is my government letting me down? Why are they leaving 10% of the people there? And now we've got this scandal unfolding where the tens of thousands, it's going to get up to over 100,000 Afghans who have been evacuated into Kuwait or Germany or Albania or Spain, all of these holding places. Now what we're hearing, and I certainly have this information firsthand from my former colleagues in Germany, Americans, career officials, that the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security are rushing through the vetting. They're telling individuals who have incomplete information that they should just rush them and use their hunch on whether or not these people are, allowed to come in. Now, look, I have information that some of the flights from Kuwait are just refueling in Ramstein, whereby we are putting air marshals on the planes because they're bound for the United States. Now, look, that just signals right there. If we're putting air marshals on planes of refugees that were supposed to be vetted in Kuwait, we don't trust that they're being thoroughly vetted. Now, lastly, I'll just say this. The career individuals that I've worked closely with over the years who are still working in Germany, they've told me that they feel very uncomfortable being put in this position by the Biden team, where they're the ones on the ground and they're the ones who are going to get in trouble. The pressure coming to them to rush through and not have proper information, they're going to get in trouble because many of the criteria used by our Foreign Service officers and career DHS officials, the criteria is congressionally mandated. Breaking the law is what they're being asked to do by offering refugees access to the United States without proper paperwork.
So, Rick, help us to understand, because it's the State Department that's involved in this. They're putting pressure to move this vetting process quickly. How many of these Afghans can we see coming to the United States? Will there be a secondary vetting process when they get here?
Well, no, once you get to the United States, all bets are off. You've got to vet them before they come into the United States, because otherwise you're just asking for trouble. These flights are coming to Dulles and to Philadelphia mainly. And they're telling DHS officials in Germany, they're telling Foreign Service officers who work in consular affairs, they're telling these individuals that some have been preliminarily vetted in Kuwait. But that doesn't fly in the face of reality, because when they land in Germany, when they're at Ramstein, they're now being asked to be put through the full vetting process. That vetting process takes sometimes a year and a half, but it certainly does not take a couple of days. And I want to be very clear about this, is that, I'm somebody who has worked at the United Nations for 8 years, worked overseas in Germany. I care very deeply about the world community. I don't ever want to be accused somebody who is anti-immigrant or anti-refugee. That is ridiculous. But this country, our great America, is incredibly generous. We allow 1 million people a year to become US citizens. Unfortunately, we have 100 million people who want to come in. And if you don't have rules, you don't have a country.
No, that's exactly right. And what we're seeing with these numbers, Ambassador, is of the thousands of people who are actually on these flights, you have handfuls of Americans. That's not what the American people believe should be happening. They think it should be the opposite.
I'm going to read you these numbers. I have to look down because I want to be accurate here. The numbers that the State Department and DHS officials in Germany have been given, and this is only through August 30th, that 23,092 people have been allowed through Ramstein to come into the United States. Again, that's only through August 30th. We did a lot more flights after that. But out of that, only 609 are Americans. Now, look, I'm being told that the setup at Ramstein by individuals who are setting it up, Americans, is completely been planned for weeks and months. They even have culturally appropriate food. They have separate facilities for prayer and religious activities. This is highly sophisticated setup that's been planned for a long time. If we're going to make a plan and we're going to ensure that we're taking care of these individuals and giving them culturally appropriate food, we should absolutely think about Americans and the demands that we have on the vetting process to make sure that every single person has the proper paperwork. I believe that if you don't have the proper paperwork, you can't prove to us what you say in person, then you shouldn't be able to come into the United States. Maybe another country will take you, but I don't believe that we should change the congressionally mandated criteria. We have too many people that want to come in, and we should stick to the rules and not break the rules just simply because we're trying to rush the process.
Well, and as we know, one of the easiest ways probably for some of these refugees to come in is through the southern border because no rules apply down at the southern border. But Rick, let me ask you about this Reuters story that broke this last week talking about this Biden call with the Afghan president, Ghani, where he said before the Afghan collapse, Biden pressed Ghani to change perception. Tell us what you think about what came out of this call and the dangers that it represents in terms of how this impacts Biden's decision to swiftly and catastrophically withdraw from Afghanistan.
Look, I want to be very clear about leaked intelligence, transcripts or audios, and there's now an audio that's been leaked. This is wrong. We cannot have this from the intelligence community. I don't care if it benefits conservatives in this case. They did it to President Trump, and it's wrong. We should not have leaks like this. But now that we've seen this, now that I'm in the private sector and I'm looking at the situation, I'm appalled that we have a president who's literally asking another person to lie in order to cover up for his politics. I think that this is a real problem for Biden. It's not going to be covered by the Washington, D.C. media because they really work for the ruling party. But the rest of us outside of Washington see this and we say, this is what we thought. We thought that the whole thing was political. We thought that you ignored the Pentagon advice about closing Bagram. We thought that you were just rushing through in order to have some sort of ribbon cutting. Now we see your words. Now we see that you were actually denying the reality and you were asking another world leader to pretend like the Taliban wasn't that tough or wasn't making progress. Look, I think that the reality is that individuals died because we were told that we had a handle on the situation. Here now we have President Biden asking another world leader to lie about the reality in order to make his policy look good. That's outrageous. It may go over in Washington as just pure politics, but outside of Washington, the rest of us look at it and we say, that is disgusting, and people better change their ways. And whoever came up with this strategy should be fired. We need to see more people held to account.
That's
and,
right.
And I think that in Washington, you keep finding people who fail up.
There's no failure in Washington, Rick. Just hang out long enough. They all get regurgitated back in. Sometimes when you're the biggest failure, you have some of the biggest career successes. It's outrageous. And let me give you another example here that I'd love to get your opinion on. Not only do you have Joe Biden trying to get another president of another country to join his spin to make his domestic politics better and to kind of obfuscate the failure of this policy, you just said that they spent all this time planning for this migration. Is it at all plausible that the American people should accept the fact that we left billions of dollars of planes and tanks and cars and ammo and guns and weapons just because we didn't realize how fast this was going to deteriorate? Or is it more sinister that the Biden administration didn't ever plan on taking this stuff with them, these armaments with them, because they're playing nice with the new regime?
Whatever the reason is, it's really scary, because now we've seen reports of some of this U.S. military equipment. We know it's in the hands of the Taliban, but now we see reports that it's going into Iran. And
Right.
this is a real scandal, I have to tell you. I spent 2 hours with President Trump at Minster this week, and I have to tell you, it was one of the things that he was very concerned about is the ammunition, the planes, the equipment. How is this going to come back and be used against us? He was very concerned. Now, I've been in the Oval Office with President Trump, where he instructed the Pentagon at the time to bring home every piece of equipment, including tents. I've been in the Oval Office where he was describing the tents that we were using. President Trump was describing the tents and saying, I don't want to leave anything there. And if you have to leave something because it's too big or was assembled over there and we can't quite get it back, then you should disable it, destroy it. Make sure that it cannot fall into the hands. And this is just something that I think an outsider, a businessman like President Trump, realizes, that you can't leave your assets in the hands of your enemies or your opponents. And he sees this very clearly, and it had been planned in the Trump administration to make sure that we did not leave this equipment. But the rushed job of the Biden team clearly has caused chaos. I think we're going to find, when we really look at the details, that General Miller, who was in charge of Bagram, he did not say close Bagram. And I don't care what Jake Sullivan says. I don't care what President Biden says. We all know now they've been asking people to lie about the Taliban. Now they're telling us that the generals told them to close Bagram. That's another lie, and that's going to come out. There's no question about that. I have information that proves that General Miller absolutely did not want to shut down Bagram. And anyone, including General Milley, trying to say that somehow General Miller, General Scotty Miller, was telling people that he wanted to shut down Bagram, that is not true.
So I got to ask you, Rick, because I think this is something that we keep having this conversation as well. I mean, President Biden says the buck stops with him. He says that he's the one that ultimately made the decision with the withdrawal of our troops in Afghanistan. What's your opinion? Who's in charge?
Well, I've always said that I think Susan Rice is in charge. There's no question about that. Remember her deputies when she was National Security Advisor for Barack Obama. Her two deputies, one was Avril Haines, who's now running, she's the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, my old job. And her other deputy was Anthony Blinken. the current Secretary of State. So both of these individuals have reported to Susan Rice. Their loyalties are to Susan Rice. They got the job because of Susan Rice. No one in their right mind outside of Washington thinks that Susan Rice is in charge of domestic policy issues and is working on Medicare and Medicaid issues. No one thinks that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Rick Grinnell. You always have such a not always encouraging, but a really interesting angle on what's really happening.
I do have a quick question. You've got that recall in California. What's the latest on that? I mean, will Newsom be recalled?
Well, I certainly hope so. We're working hard to make that happen. But his personally appointed Secretary of State has announced that you can print your ballot from home, and we're doing all mail-in ballots to really lousy voter rolls. So I'm very nervous.
Yeah, it's amazing. They like election security when it means that you might not have the ability to have a recall, but all of a sudden they figure out if you can just have anybody print out as many ballots as they want from their house, which I know is not what their stated intention is, but when you don't have election security, you can actually stop a grassroots revolution too. So it's a really pernicious thing we're seeing around the country. And we appreciate your voice. The voice in California, as Mercy mentions, is incredibly important. You've been determining and helping demonstrate how weak these voter rolls, the shape that they're in, and also how we have a lot of conservatives we have to register to vote. So keep up the great work on that and on all these fronts.
If I can do a shameless plug, I've launched this organization called Fix California, and if people could go to fixcalifornia.com, I would really appreciate it. We need the help. We're going to do to California what Stacey Abrams did to Georgia.
I like it.
We might have to do a fixtheworld.org, but we can talk about that off camera, Rick.
Thanks for joining us, Rick Grinnell. Keep up the great work, and we'll be right back to America Uncanceled after the short break.
The president support abortion when his own Catholic faith teaches abortion is morally wrong?
He believes that it's a woman's right, it's a woman's body, and it's her choice.
Why does the president, who does he believe then should look out for the unborn child?
He believes that it's up to a woman to make those decisions, and up to a woman to make those decisions with her doctor. I know you've never faced those choices, nor have you ever been pregnant, but for women out there who have faced those choices, this is an incredibly difficult thing. The president believes their rights should be respected.
Okay, Matt, that was Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary. It happened last week where she went after this EWTN reporter for asking a very basic question about pro-life and Joe Biden's position on being, as Biden is supposedly a devout Catholic, what's his position on this issue dealing with the Texas bill and the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Texas ban, the 6-week Texas ban. But she talks about gender. I thought that the Democrats were the party of no gender. See, they believe in the pregnant person, the birthing person.
The birthing person,
right?
the nursing person.
Right, so it's not breastfeeding anymore, which, by the way, for all those breastfeeding moms out there, it's a tough job, okay? And the men can't do it. Sorry, they just can't.
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. So, this chest feeding thing. So it's so convenient when they're able to throw in the non-gender language, but then if we talk about abortion, automatically it becomes a woman's issue. Was Jen Psaki off these talking points?
So here's the deal, liberal socialist women. If you're going to tell us they're birthing people and nursing people, then you can't reprimand a male reporter by saying to the male reporter, you're not really basically allowed to bring up questions on abortion because you can't have children. They have to decide, can men have children or can men not have children? And the left has already ceded the ground to the fact that there's no gender. So I enjoy watching Jen Psaki try to reclaim this idea that only women have children, which I actually would agree with if she would actually be consistent. And this is one of these crazy moments where Joe Biden has said again how he supports Roe v. Wade. Let me just be clear.
He used to be pro-life too.
Roe v. Wade allows abortion potentially through 9 months of a pregnancy, and now they're trying to expand it to what they call, post-birth abortion. A baby is born and you can euthanize the child. So there's nothing Catholic about that. There's nothing Christian about that. There's nothing faith-filled about it. There's nothing consistent with the Bible about this. So when Joe Biden says that he's a devout Catholic and he stands for children being able to be killed through 9 months of pregnancy, it's really an outrage. And what he is doing, I don't know if he realizes this, what he's doing is committing such a scandalous outrage on his faith. It's okay to be pro-choice in this country. It's legal. You're allowed to have that opinion. But you can't couch it within your faith. You can't couch it within the Bible. You certainly can't couch it within the Catholic Church.
Well, and one of the things we stand for strongly is no taxpayer-funded abortions, which is something that the Democrats have really spent a lot of time trying to get rid of.
They used
the Hyde Amendment.
They used to be in support of it.
In terms of getting rid of the Hyde Amendment to allow for taxpayer abortions. We also know that these Democrats are in the pockets of Planned Parenthood, where the largest abortion provider. And it's just, this is a moment for the pro-life community to rise up. This is also another thing that you're going to start noticing in the media, which is they're trying to get off of Afghanistan as quickly as possible because that was a debacle. And now Joe Biden is trying to motivate his base on this abortion discussion. And there's going to be a lot more of this issue in the next couple of weeks as the Supreme Court takes up the case in October. So I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be watching clearly, but it will affect the governor's race in Virginia, definitely, because you're already starting to see Terry McAuliffe, trying to put the Republican candidate, Glenn Youngkin, into a position where he needs to answer what his position is on this issue of pro-life.
Let me help you, Glenn Youngkin.
It's pretty easy.
You're not for late-term abortions, okay? Just use that language, because that's what Roe v. Wade would do. It allows for abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. And the other thing is, it's putting the radicalism back on the Democrats. I'm the old guy at this table, and I used to work on the Hill as you did. And when I worked on the Hill, there were pro-life Democrats like David Bonnier and Dick Gephardt, and many, many others. And now there's really basically essentially no pro-life Democrats in the House or Senate. Even Joe Manchin has a very terrible record on abortion. Kristen Sinema, the same. So, this used to be a Democratic Party that embraced the immigrant and embraced the faith of the immigrant communities. And so you had Democrat leaders, David Bonnier, Dick Gephardt, they were the very top of the House Democratic leadership, and they were pro-life, and all that's over. The pro-life movement is now a function of the Republican Party. Now, the problem, as we see Republicans having to defend pro-life when they can't do it, it tells you that in the end, the pro-life community has to be careful about relying too much on the Republican Party. Yes, that's the party that will tend to support its positions, but it's going to have to keep the Republican Party strong and not vice versa.
Yeah, that's right. But I got to just show you this quick tweet. So Chris Hahn, he's kind of like the crazy Democrat, loves to attack me all the time. He literally tweeted,
I didn't know he was still a thing. Is he still out there?
No, not really. Yeah. But anyways, he put a tweet out about Susan Collins and how she should be involved in codifying Roe v. Wade, like putting her on the spot here. And of course, my response was, well, you're a man. You really don't have a voice in this whole situation, according to your fellow Democrats.
That's good. That's
so
awesome.
It's funny how convenient these Democrats are when they want to not define two genders, but then all of a sudden they're saying, wait a second, no, the women have the choice. It's all a bunch of BS.
That's right.
And we're going to keep calling them out.
That's right. And the other thing is on this issue of life just generally, just track those poll numbers. You're seeing more and more young people embracing the idea of science and embracing the idea that life begins in the womb as we all know it. So anyway, thanks for bringing this up, because I thought that was yet another top 10 disgraceful moments in the White House press briefing room.
Biden is not just having a worst week in Washington, he's having the worst month in Washington.
Do you know the only person who's really happy about what's going on with the Biden administration are those two little people, Rosalind and Jimmy Carter? Remember that photo where they look so little?
Yeah.
He is doing wonders for Jimmy Carter's reputation.
I know.
Jimmy Carter, the living president who was terrible at the job in every conceivable way.
Yeah.
And that old man's got a smile on his face because Joe Biden is making him kind of move up in the rankings.
That's right.
Anyway, thank you, baby. Thanks for being with us. Great show. Rick Grinnell. Always great to talk with him, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow.